I know we're going to have more people joining us, but for the sake of time, I think I'm going to get us started this evening. Good evening, everyone. I'm Patty Roble, the Executive Director of the Levesque Institute for Civic Engagement. It's our pleasure tonight to join with Leadership Niagara and present to you this presidential election series to inform you, the voter, through the expertise and experience of Leadership Niagara alumni on issues critical to this year's presidential election. The intent of this series is to keep political views out of these sessions and bring facts that we hope will help you become informed through the lens of what candidate you feel will be the best to carry out our democratic principles. In these divisive and turbulent times before us, strong leadership is critical to uniting us both domestically and globally. Tonight's session, Leaders Sharing Visions, Values, and Views, will focus how leadership experience matters over time. I would like to thank Liz Zalowski, President and CEO of Leadership Niagara, Dr. Paul Vermette, and Brittany DiPietro, the Levesque Institute Program Manager, for their deliberate and thoughtful planning of these events. Our distinguished panelists tonight represent a cross-sector of business, education, and human service organizations. Our format tonight will be each of the panelists will take up to 2 minutes to answer questions. There will be time for questions at the end of the question period, and please post your questions in the chat box. Tonight we have with us Mark Laurie, Leadership Niagara Class of 1997. Mark is the superintendent of the Niagara Falls City School District. Mark has been an educator in the Niagara Falls District for more than 30 years. He has served in a variety of capacities during that time, including in-school suspension room monitor, grade 3 and special education teacher, the dean of students, assistant principal, chief educational administrator of the 2,500 student Niagara Falls High School, deputy superintendent, and was appointed superintendent in 2016. Mr. Laurie has received numerous awards and recognitions, including Educator of the Year from the Niagara Area Chamber of Commerce, one of the 40 under 40 rising leaders in Western New York from the Business First publication, and a Spirit of Niagara Award from the Boys and Girls Club of Niagara, to name only a few. Most recently, Mr. Laurie was honored by the New York State Office of Mental Health for his focus on promoting mental health wellness for students. Mr. Laurie is a lifelong resident of Niagara Falls. Mark, it's a pleasure having you with us tonight.
Thank you. That just to be clear, that 40 under 40 was last year.
Oh, we blew it. We just said you were 37 besides.
Oh, 40 under 40 was new, that award.
You just made it under the gun, Mark.
That's a new award. So.
A new one.
Yeah, that was about 20 years ago.
Our next panelist is Robin Kruger. Robin, this year, is the Leadership Niagara Leader of the Year. Congratulations to Robin.
Thank you.
She is from the Leadership Niagara Class of 2004, and Robin is the President and CEO of Community Missions of Niagara Frontier, Incorporated. Robin Kruger has dedicated her life to improving the fortunes of those with whom she comes into contact. She joined the staff of Community Missions in 1977 as a live-in house parent for 6 adolescent males, rose through the ranks, and became the first full-time female executive director in 1994. In the past 25 years, with Ms. Kruger at the helm, Community Missions has expanded its services with 20 different programs, and Community Missions is now regarded as the largest private provider of basic human needs in Niagara County and is the largest private provider of mental health services in the county. Ms. Kruger serves on a variety of local, county, and state committees, boards, and associations, and currently she serves as president of the Juvenile Justice Association of New York State and the Niagara Behavioral Health Network. She is the chair of the Niagara County Coalition of Services to the Homeless and a board member of the Homeless Alliance of Western New York. Ms. Kruger has been honored with numerous awards, including recent accolades as the recipient of the St. Vincent de Paul Award by Niagara University in 2016 and as the 2018 Woman of Distinction by the New York State Senate. Thank you for being with us tonight, Robin.
Thank you so much. It's really a pleasure.
And our third panelist is Bob Confer. Bob is a Leadership Niagara Class of 2007, and he is the president of Confer Plastics. Bob Confer is the president with facilities located in North Tonawanda and Niagara Falls. The company has been in operation since 1973 and employs 260 people making a wide variety of products ranging from consumer goods to industrial products. Since 2005, Bob has written a weekly opinion column focusing on government and economics for the Lockport Union Sun and Journal and the Niagara Gazette. Bob is serving the Boy Scouts of America as president of the Iroquois Trail Council, which currently serves 2,500 Cub Scouts, Boy Scouts, and Explorers in eastern Niagara, Orleans, Genesee, Wyoming, and Livingston counties. Bob is a 1996 graduate of SUNY Brockport and a 2007 graduate of Leadership Niagara. He was selected as Leadership Niagara's 2018 Speaker of the Year. He resides in rural Gasport with his wife Bernadette and their children, Alexandria and Warren. Bob, thank you for being with us again tonight. I'm going to ask, again, our format will be to ask each of the panelists with two answers, to try to keep their answers to within 2 minutes. And I will start with one and then we'll try to rotate so that each of you could take a turn in going first. But I'll start in the order of how I introduced. Our first question will be to Mr. Laurie. And it's, please share your years of leadership experience and equate how leadership matters to the turbulent times our nation is facing.
Well, I guess the first thing I want to say is it's pretty nice to be on a panel with Robin, who I have tremendous respect for what she's done, both for the community and for her organization. Mr. Confer, I don't know you, but I read you every week, and I wish I knew you because you've got a real common sense, plain way of writing things. So I appreciate all that I read from you, and I would like to get to know you because I appreciate how you write. So one of the things that happened for me in leadership was that I had a lot of really good mentors. And I learned pretty quickly that the only way to get through this in being a leader is to have mentors, because you're often very alone in your decisions. And you don't make good decisions alone. So you've got to have a cadre of mentors who you can turn to say, what do you think of this? What do you think of that? And early on, I found out that I have to have multiple mentors, because you kind of get to know the person and how they think. In a certain situation, you don't want to go to that person because you want maybe a more broad or liberal opinion. So I think having a group of really strong mentors is the first thing that I know about leadership, because I only know what I know. I don't know what I don't know. And I know that I've got to use others who I respect to get information from. So I think mentorship and finding the right mentors as a leader was really, really critical and really key. And having multiple mentors was something that I think helped me, to form my opinion, to shape who I am, to learn and listen and say, I don't think I ever want to do that, or I think I do want to do that. And then, coming up and watching people, I think I learned just as much about things I didn't want to do by watching leaders and people that I didn't agree with as people that I did. So I think there's a lot that can be taken away from both kind of views, watching things and saying, I wouldn't, and then, but playing yourself out in that role, you know what I mean? Like asking yourself to take that role. So I think that observing and watching and listening, as well as having a lot of mentors, was helpful. I think the other thing was getting involved in the community. Getting engaged in the community has really helped form my leadership and really helped shape who I am and who I was. There's a fire alarm they're testing in the background, nothing to worry about. But I think that those are kind of the three things that strike me about my career as a leader. And I decided that I didn't want to be a manager. There's a lot of people who are managers. Managers just get the things done day to day. I think leaders really have to be not afraid to make unpopular decisions, and that was a big part of it. But that's something that I always wanted to do, and I promise not to interrupt everybody else like other debates. So I won't.
Thank you, Mark. Okay, Robin.
We are always on these Zoom calls all the time, and I always start talking when I'm on mute. So I apologize for that. So for those of you who did the quick math when I was introduced, yes, I have been on the Niagara Frontier and at Community Missions for 43 years. This past September was my 43rd anniversary. So I was here when Mark was a student in Niagara Falls High School. Bob, I don't know how old you were, but I'm guessing I'm older than you are too. So we'll leave that. I really agree with a lot of what Mark has to say. I guess my focus has been primarily on several leaders who came before me who were, I don't know if indecisive is the right word to utilize, but it really had me focused on having multiple strategies and all going on at the same time. Being able to pivot as need be, being able to think on your feet. So even bad leadership experiences can help prepare you for that type of strategic work that often comes when you are the leader, and certainly has come in very handy this year in terms of not knowing from one day to the next what we are going to be facing or what type of restrictions we would definitely have in that process. I talk about growing up in the agency. I was 22 when I started at Community Missions as a part-time house parent living with 8 juvenile delinquent boys, and have come to the conclusions that girls are just mean and would much rather have boys to deal with. But in that process, I also found that growing up in an organization and moving to different levels within an organization, you really are leaving your peer groups behind. And especially as you move to a leadership role, you really have to begin to look outside of your organization for your collaborators. There are CEOs in the community, both here and in Lockport, who I rely on very heavily to be able to bounce ideas off of. I know my conversation with them is very similar to what we're going through at Community Missions, so it's a safe conversation. And you really, as Mark said, you can't do this alone. You really have to find those collaborators and individuals that you can work with and feel safe with, so that you have a peer group of your own that does not come from within. I certainly understand you can be friends with people within the organization, but when push comes to shove, you are the final say, and you are the person that really has to make that final determination. And that's not always a pleasant situation to be involved with if you are heavily involved with the people that you work with, at least to that extent. It's also something that others have to get used to, because they're used to seeing you. Especially in my case, for 43 years, I was their colleague, I was their equal as a divisional director within the organization, but then 25 years ago became the CEO. And some people made the transition well, others not so well. So that just takes a whole different skill set. But I think early on in the process, at least for me, I decided that I needed to look at the agency as a whole and not just a particular program. And I enjoyed that. I enjoyed looking at it as a whole from that perspective. And especially when times get tough, you have to look at the whole organization that you are mentoring and working with, as opposed to just a microcosm, because that's where you're going to end up in difficulty. If your vision becomes too myopic, then you're sunk. You just can't, you're just not going to be able to function.
Thank you, Robin. Bob.
Okay, the way I was looking at it, and I apologize for my rural connection. I hope that the cable or the internet here manages to maintain itself, because it keeps on telling me that the connection is unstable, though a lot of people read my columns will say that I'm unstable. But I'll focus on the leadership tactics that I utilized and that I would like to see utilized by some of those who are in leadership at, say, the state and federal level. And I like to synthesize it down to the 4 C's. So the 4 C's that I would have is, number 1 is to be calming. And this is critical, and I've seen this through the wild ride that's been 2020. When you're leading in an organization, I hate to use this analogy, but it works well. People hate to hear the name Tom Brady, but when the game was on the line, People were always looking at Tom Brady. He was the epitome of calm, the epitome of cool. That's what people expect out of their leaders. Because when you look at people who might be reporting to you or people who are served by you, whether they're your clients or your customers, they expect a little bit of calm to be there at the top of the food chain, if you will, as you're navigating these difficult times. So you've always got to be cool under pressure, not sweat, not show those emotions. And I know it's difficult. It's almost impossible for a human being to contain those, but we have to strive to do that all the time. The next C would be confidence. You have to make sure that you're instilling confidence in yourself, and also by doing that, those who are served by you, those who work with you, can have confidence in your leadership, confidence in your organization, because you don't want to have a failure in leadership and you don't want to have a failure in that organization. And then that leads into the third C, where I look at that being control. And it's not always easy to be in control of the situation, especially with looking at what 2020 has been. It's been health issues, socioeconomic issues, economic issues. The whole world has been a total mess, and you can't do it by yourself. As the other panelists have said, you have to rely on a teamwork method when it comes to leadership, and you have to be in control of the situation, but you can't do it by yourself. So you have to have good people with you who believe in your culture, who believe in what you want to get as the end result. And one thing that we did this year that was unique is heading into getting back to work in May and June. I had spent weeks during the shutdown planning, how are we going to run during the COVID times? So I came up with a game plan, but I need to manage the day-to-day of the operations at the plant. So I empowered someone to be the COVID-19 administrator, and that young man is in charge of COVID protocols, and that's all he does for all of his working days, and that's all he's going to do through the future, because I'd like to have control of the situation, but I know I can't do that all by myself. So then that would lead ultimately into the fourth of the C's, which is capitalize on the abnormalities of a situation. So I like to tell people, you look for the silver linings, and if you fall into manure, make sure you come out smell like roses. So I look at what's happened in our organization. The staycation economy has been magnified considerably by these stay-at-home orders, all those expectations. So when it comes to that, we've invested in machines, invested in people to make sure that we can capitalize on that. We're actually growing when a lot of businesses right now are dying on the vine. So we're taking advantage of the bad times that are before us.
Thank you, Bob. I'm
Bob,
trying not to be a Chris Wallace here. So I'm trying to keep our times, and I want to commend our three panelists. They did very well the first round.
Patty, just as a tip, Bob, when your internet says it's unstable, if you turn off your camera but leave on your audio, it will enhance the audio feed. So that might help as a tip.
Thank you, Liz.
Sure, sorry to interrupt.
Okay.
No problem. Okay. We're gonna turn our attention a little bit, and I asked the panelists to think about the divisive times that we're in now. Can a divisive leader lead during divisive times effectively? And we'll start out our first round with Robin, you answering this question, please.
I think a divisive leader, it depends. I guess what I want to say is I think it depends on what other characteristics and what other leadership qualities someone who is painted as a divisive leader really is. Sometimes divisive leaders inspire others to do things differently. They also have others who feel that they can't follow that direction, so they really need to help move and move things into a totally different direction. So while I think a divisive leader can lead, the outcomes may not be what we expect them to be. I think I agree with Bob that control is very important in leadership, but yet at the same time, if you don't have some flexibility to move with that control, then it becomes a stranglehold in terms of what both your staff are dealing with and what others feel the outcomes may end up being. It's so hard to have a conversation in these times without having a political conversation, and I'm trying really, really, really hard not to have that conversation because I know that that is not what the purpose of this evening is about. And certainly if I had all those answers, I would be working on 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue and not 1570 Buffalo Avenue. So again, I think it depends on the total character of the leader as opposed to just one characteristic. How the divisiveness manifests itself also makes a difference. I think leaders can be divisive and they can sort of disappear into the woodwork. I think if you have a divisive leader who is very active and manipulative in the process of what's going on, it makes leading an organization for a positive outcome to be somewhat difficult. But again, I think it just depends on what type of character you have behind that individual. And if they somehow through the work can see that what they're doing is tearing their organization apart, that perhaps they would have the ability to redirect and possibly revamp the work that they're doing, realizing they may not realize initially that they are in fact being divisive.
Thank you, Robin. Bob, can you please answer the same question?
Yep, I'm going to give it a yes and no. I'm going to say that some leaders can be divisive because almost all leaders at some point to some people are going to be divisive because you're always going to have someone who's a coworker who didn't like your decision. And what I do is I look at someone like Mr. Laurie, think about the conflict that he has to deal with on a daily basis where some parents are going to look at him differently. Some parents are going to put him on a pedestal. Some might not like his decisions. Same would hold true for taxpayers and all the coaches that work in his athletic department. They've got to deal with parents all the time who hate all of their decisions. So that leader might be doing the very best thing possible, but they're going to be looked at as being divisive because some people just feel slighted by that leader. So it's a difficult thing to manage. Difficult times like this call for people who in certain ways have to be divisive, but at the same time, they have to be something to everyone. And that can be extremely difficult. And it's something that should be expressed at the state and federal levels, where especially when people have to get rid of party labels, when someone is elected as an executive of a state or federal government, they should focus on everyone as a whole and not necessarily parties. And the same holds true within an organization, as a business, and as in a community, because we have to focus on making sure that all the stakeholders, whoever they might be, whether they're clients, customers, or coworkers, are all treated with the utmost respect, so that way that individual can lead. So I know it's kind of a gray area there, because divisiveness comes with being in charge. And I think it's on the mantle that we hold dearly when we are in charge of an organization every day, and we have to come to expect it, and we have to learn how to deal with it and rise above that and be better.
Thank you, Bob. Mr. Laurie.
Yeah, I think it's a resounding no. You can't be a leader and be divisive. By the nature of the word leadership, you've got to, certainly as Bob and Robin referenced, you've got to do everything to explain the whys of what you're doing to help people follow you. But divisiveness sounds to me like an intentional word, and that will intentionally cause a lack of trust, a lack of productivity, and a lack of respect. So if you're coming from a divisive position, you may move certain people, but I think the art of leadership is moving everybody, even if it's a small amount. So if you don't know you're being divisive, then somebody better clue you in. So you do have to make tough decisions, as Bob referenced, and have learned that everybody's not going to like them or like me, which was a big learning curve for me because of the way I came through the system. But I never tried to divisively lead. I just don't think it's a way to get things done. And it's like people say politics. Well, politics is really not a bad word. It's just the art of getting things done. And to be a divisive politician or a divisive leader is counterproductive to getting things done. So I would tend to stay away from that, thinking that you can do that. Now, does it happen? It happens. Sure, it does. It happens. But I think that's more out of maybe a team behind that person who really understand what they're trying to do. But I mean, if you're going to be upfront with somebody and you don't like their work, you tell them. You don't have to pit people against each other. You tell them, you shut the door, you tell them, and you move on. So I don't gravitate to divisive leaders. There are some. There are people that do it intentionally. That it's a style. It's not a style that I like. I don't. You have to know yourself and be yourself, but I'm not comfortable with that kind of leadership or working in that kind of environment, and made a decision in my life not to. So that's where I stand.
Thank you, Mark. Our third question, I would like to, Bob, for you to start. And the question is, what are the consequences of poor leadership in various contexts?
Oh boy, there could be a whole bunch of them. One, we look at the organizational side. You're going to have people leaving because of poor leadership. So that would be those who directly report to that leader, such as coworkers, teammates. They're going to leave just out of pure frustration. They'll go to the greener pastures. There's also the aspect of clientele leaving, and clientele could be, for any of our organizations, could be the customers or it could be the residents of a community. So you look at people leaving in mass urban areas right now because of frustrations they might have with lockdowns or social unrest, where they're going out to the rural areas, which is something I never expected, people moving into my neighborhood and my communities in mass like that. And then also there's the unknowns, which can always stymie socioeconomic development. When if someone is not leading and providing a whole series of unknowns in terms of their character and their output, that stymies the ability of free enterprise to expand themselves. And it stymies the ability of individuals, whether it's themselves or their families, to advance themselves within their role in the organization and their role in the community. And that can put an end to service to community and also the expansion of the betterment of the community. So it's poor leadership organizationally, government-wise, can really destroy everything around it. And it's, for lack of a better word, it can be considered a cancer, and it can be something that can set back whole communities and whole organizations decades, and it needs serious repair.
Thank you, Bob. Robin.
Sorry, I was starting to respond to the chat box. And perhaps you would prefer that we not do that. I don't know. But I think, as both have identified, divisive leaders, I pretty much consider divisive leaders individuals that look out more for their own personal interest than that of the organization that they're serving. So I would say certainly a divisive leader ends up with cliques. They end up with individuals who vie for favors. You often will find I wouldn't say whistleblowers in the sense that something wrong is occurring and therefore needs to be as part of a corporate compliance, but you'll find, I guess for lack of a better word, tattletales within the confines. There's always something wrong. Somebody's doing something, somebody's not doing it right. What are we going to do about it? And I've got your back. Just tell me what you want me to do and I'll spy for you and do all kinds of other things. So I think divisive leadership really tears down the fabric of an organization. It tears down the teamwork of an organization. It certainly does not support a cohesive, collaborative, or healthy work environment. And I know sometimes we are in positions to address that, and at other times we are not in positions to address that. And what I was saying in the chat box is, unfortunately, sometimes we may, for our own selves, need to be successful somewhere else. I think doesn't mean you need to get yourself terminated, doesn't mean you need to raise a ruckus or whatever, but I think you have to at some point decide if, after conversations with maybe your supervisor or their supervisor or something, depending on how far up the food chain you want to go. And it's not that they're going to always address your concerns in the way that you feel they need to. But if you continue to see no progress whatsoever and the divisiveness continuing or worsening, then at times you're going to have to make a decision for yourself, and you're going to have to make a decision about being successful elsewhere, because that organization does not have the capacity to support the goals and outcomes that you yourself have. So divisive leaders, again, the divisive leaders that I've come across help me be a better leader, because as Mark said earlier, those were some negative mentors, but yet at the same time, they were in fact mentors about how we don't want to do something. And fortunately for me, that worked out fairly well.
Thank you, Robin. The next question is, if you were to give any recommendations to the incoming or incumbent president on how to lead us through the pandemic, what would they be? And I was asked Mark to start us off on this one.
Just to the point in the chat boxes, and then I'll answer that in a minute. You really only have three choices on the divisive leader. You can accept it and live with it. You can leave the organization, or you could try to become your own leader in your own sphere. Secondly, to Judge Watson's point here, I think one of the things that leaders have to do is they have to have stamina and continue to find people to surround themselves with that have the same beliefs. So we can't give up hope, but I want to surround myself with people like Bob and Patty and Robin and Liz, and just keep working with that group and not give up hope. I think that the tough part about leadership is stamina. And that's why I have to keep associating with those people that have this, not always agree with me, but have the same beliefs, basically, and have the stamina to keep working together. And it's hard, but you got to keep finding those people and not give up hope. The managing in the pandemic, it would just be nice if we didn't move the goalpost every 5 minutes, right? Can we just not? And I know science is changing or evolving, but let's just set some expectations. Let's put everything aside and just say, look, this is what it is. This is the strategy that we all have to use. These are the expectations. This is the enforcement. We'll be back in 2 weeks to measure how we did, and we're gonna run this strategy for a while. It just feels like the goalposts move every day, and it's a one-upsmanship or a gamesmanship as to who's got the right position or the right power. Somebody has to take the helm, make the unpopular decision, get feedback from all those that in the know. Don't move the goalpost until you're ready to tell everybody you're going to move the goalpost, and stay the course. When it's time to change, you tell people why. I think people need to know the whys sometimes. When they know the why answer, then they'll either join you or dissent, but at least they'll know the thinking behind it. So I think that the incoming, or hopefully the incoming president will at least have a steady, consistent message that doesn't move the goalpost every 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mark. Robin.
Are we on to question 4?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Just wanted to check to make sure. I think if I were to make a recommendation, I think it is consistency, and the why that Mark talks about. I also think, just from a perspective of someone to lead through this particular thing, is pay attention to the people that you have available. I think, unfortunately, individuals don't take advantage of the resources that are around them. And pay attention in particular to the scientists, to pay attention to the people that this is their job. Your job as president, or your job as a leader of a state or a city or something else, you can't be everything to everyone. So surrounding yourselves with the right people that can provide you with the information that you need in real time to make decisions what's best for your organization is of the utmost importance. About a year ago, I was told that it takes me too long sometimes to make a decision. But unfortunately, or fortunately, in my purview, I believe it's important to listen to the voices first and make one decision, instead of making one decision one day and then turning around 3 days later and saying, oh, I got some new information, let's do this now. It makes you seem wishy-washy. It makes you seem like you're really not taking into consideration all the input that you have available to you. So the biggest thing I would say is, look, you have access to world-class individuals, researchers, pandemic doctors, infectious disease control doctors. Use the people that are at your disposal and then make decisions. Stop making decisions on the fly because it doesn't benefit anyone.
Thank you, Robin. Bob?
My shopping list would start with being an open book, and this would be at the macro level and the micro level. And the way I would look at it is whoever's going to be in charge has to give us the big picture of what they intend to do, how they plan to do it. But at the micro level, and this is something I encouraged in this week's column to Governor Cuomo, is if you know that statistically we're going to get to something, share it beforehand and plan accordingly so that way our organizations and our communities don't fail. So if we were provided as leaders that playbook, we can certainly plan for the future and be ready for it, whether it's creation of a rainy day fund or a plan A and plan B, so that way we can succeed, so that way our people can succeed. And then also I would encourage whoever's in charge to always lead by example. And it's just the simple things of body language, following the rules. We've seen footage of Cuomo being in group mask, seen footage of humping without a mask. Those fellas have to wear a mask at all times. Like, that's what we do with the plan. And 11 hours of the day, I've got that stuck to my face because that's the message I want to portray to my team so they follow those rules. And then also encourage whoever the leader might be to lead by listening. Ears open all the time. Listen to every representative that's speaking to you. Elected people, whether it's Senate, also individuals themselves, moms, dad, business owners, whoever it might be. Let them know that you're paying attention to what the issues are that impact them, because everyone's going to have their own unique issue as we go through whatever crisis we're facing right now. And also, I'm real stickler on this one. When it comes to the teamwork of leadership, they have to believe in the various experts, whether it comes to science, health, or economics, because when it comes to COVID, it's a bigger issue. It's a societal issue. It's an economic issue. We have to focus on bringing all that together, because if we do something too much to the benefit of health, we could kill the economy. You don't want to do that, but at the same time, you don't want to jump all in on the economy and end up killing people. And it's a fine line to tread it, and that's why you have to leave it to the experts, whether they're scientists, economists, whoever it might be, and they have to believe in them and take what they say and turn that into a feasible game plan that everyone can use.
Thank you, Bob. I'm going to ask that we wait with Judge Watson's question. I think it's a great question to really close on. So if we can address our other, we have one more question left, and we'll definitely get back to the judge's question. Our next question is, what leadership qualities are needed to heal our nation with racial tensions and protests within our cities? And I'm going to ask that Robin starts out with that one.
I think when I looked at this particular question, all I thought about was listen, 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 listen. No one, no matter white, black, pink, purple, whomever, understands what it's like to be someone else, totally. You don't maybe necessarily come from the same economic background. You maybe don't come from the same geographic location. Despite what you think you know, you really never truly know what goes on for an individual as they've grown up, as they get married, as they have their own children, and what type of biases and issues that they themselves deal with. I don't presume to know that because I grew up in Virginia and studied slavery and civil unrest and all of the types of things and being in the Jim Crow South, that I know what it's like to be a racist, or that I know what it's like to have racism and to deal with that on a daily basis. The best I can do is offer to listen, to make attempts to clearly understand, to allow the individuals who are dealing with this particular situation and what it then ends up multiplying itself into. How do we come to a solution together? And how do we work together to address something that needs to be wiped off of the face of our earth? We all know it's not going to go away easily. And unless we all take an active role in whatever part we can play, That is the only way that racism will finally be defeated and eliminated, especially in our community. How we talk to each other, how we interact with each other, the types of things that businesses and other entities, organizations can do to not promote or continue a level of racism, sometimes unknowingly. We need to listen to the people that we have available to us, both within our staff, within our community, and get educated. It's not something that a white girl from Waynesboro, Virginia is going to understand without some help and support. It has to come from within, and it has to come from the community itself to help educate us. And we have to be willing to listen. I can't just listen to it once and say, oh, I know what that's all about. I know what you're going to say. If you just did this, this would all go away. That is not going to take care of it. So listen, 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 listen is the primary focus that I feel is most important if we're ever going to eliminate racism.
Thank you, Robin. Bob?
Okay, this sort of thing is kind of old hat to us at the plant. Anyone here that's been on a factory tour will typically ask at the end, how do we get so diverse? When you look at our workforce at the plant, we're 40% diverse in a city that's only 4% diverse, in a county that's 14% diverse. So how did we get there to that point that there's 7 different countries working at the plant, multiple ethnicities, multiple religions? How do we work well together? I'm actually turning this into a column for next week's newspapers. It's going to focus on what I would consider the 4 E's. And this is how we would bring diversity to a workplace, and the same thing that could apply to a community. First and foremost would be for leaders, whether they're business leaders or community leaders, to educate themselves on the issues, to understand what's impacting the people in their communities. Even if it's a different community from what they are used to, a different neighborhood, get to know the people there, get to know the situations that created that. And in our case, I made sure that I researched deeply the things that impacted the Burmese refugees who were living in Buffalo, and also the men of color who had been imprisoned, and how do you get them into the workforce, and how do you change the worldview out there? So that leads into the second E, which is enlighten. As a leader, you have to make sure that you're enlightening those who work with you and those that you're working for, to show them the joys of working with others and explain to them the same thing that you learned through self-education. Explain that to them, show them the big goal of helping people live that American dream so everyone can flourish. And that leads into the third one, which is engagement, where you would engage people from those communities within your organization to help them succeed. And by doing that, you have to focus on teamwork. One thing that brought me joy a few months ago, I looked at one machine where we had four operators working together. It was 4 different languages as their initial primary language, but they're all working there together, speaking English, smiling, and making products, all from different worlds, different places, working together to make that happen. And that ultimately leads to empowerment. And that's the last of the 4 E's. And empowerment would be allowing people to move up through the organization. When you look at what we have at the plant, we have a Korean American who's the general manager. We have African American who's our first shift foreman, and we have men of color and Hispanic men and women who are in our skilled trades, which you typically don't see in other factories and other places of work. And that's because they were empowered to do what they wanted to do, to pursue the best that they could be. And by doing that, our organization can be the very same. So I encourage that sort of mindset to be applied out in the greater community. Just taking those 4 simple E's, putting them to use, and we can be a heck of a lot better place.
Thank you, Bob. Mark?
I think Bob's got a 4-step letter for everything too. Either the C's, the E's. I can't wait to the M's. Those are good. I think I'm going to say the same thing that Robin and Bob said, maybe in a little different way. Just a little plug for the Niagara Falls School District. The best part of the school district is our diversity. It's a microcosm of the world here in the district, just from everything, from every representation of ethnicity, sexual orientation, everything. It's why I'm glad my kids went through here, because they were ready for the world. And that's what I tell people, that you'll get a good education, but you'll really be ready for the world. So I have my 4 steps here too, and they're very similar to the previous 2 presenters. I think first thing we have to do is every one of the 23 of us have to examine our own individual biases. We have to look inside ourselves first, right? So obviously I have biases, we all do. What are your own individual biases? That would be the first thing that I think you have to do. The second thing is I think we have to continue to have conversation with others. Both Robin and Bob said, we don't know what it's like to be in the skin of someone else. The only way to know that is to learn and to talk to each other and find out what they're thinking and what bothers them, what doesn't bother them. So I think we have to have conversation with others of diverse backgrounds, but I also think we can't be afraid, number 3, to have that conversation. Sometimes I think we're too afraid to have the conversation, use the words like black, and white and brown. I think we have to let the guard down in a safe way to have that conversation with each other and have it straight up, have it, right? And I think that it changes individually. So if I'm in a situation where there might be an off-colored story or joke, I have to have the courage and the wherewithal to stop the conversation and not be part of it. So I think it takes each one of us to do that. We have got to stop those conversations, and we've all been part of it. So we've got to speak up and stop it. And then we've got to stop it, but have the conversation to learn more. And finally, I think we have to look at our own sphere of influence and see what policies, practices, and procedures we could influence to make a change. So for instance, we were hiring 3 administrators here in the school district. We're a 60% diverse district, 60% a minority district. And there's just no way that I was comfortable hiring 3 white administrators. So we try to look from within, and when we didn't have somebody from within, I felt an obligation to find somebody from outside. But I think it's important that we use our sphere of influence to find, in this case, administrators and teachers that look like the kids and the clients in front of us. So I think you have to have the courage to take that step in your own sphere of influence. So between examining your own biases, having the conversation, stopping the conversation where it's necessary, and then looking at your own sphere of influence, I think it starts with each individual person.
Thank you, Mark. Being cognizant of our time, I know on our list we've got one question left, which is really a statement from our panelists. But I'd really I love the statement and the question coming from Judge Watson. So I'm going to use a little discretion here to turn to this. All of these ideas sound amazing and how I used to try and understand the world. Unfortunately, it seems as if today leaders gain power by engaging in the exact opposite of what we are discussing. At what point do we give up that people will ultimately demand character and compromise from their leaders? Without these things, the entire basis of our democracy is undermined. And I think this is exactly to the point of what we're trying to accomplish tonight. I think the 3 of you have shown how much leadership matters, thoughtful leadership. So I turn to the 3 of you, and I'm going to start with Bob and ask him to really give your thoughts on this question and how you really think that you would handle this and as a leader, and how effective can we be if we really tried to demand the character from people and the compromise that we don't see quite often in our leaders today.
I think maybe America has been quiet too long when it comes to issues of character and being led properly. And I think 2020 was the wake-up call just from how the different states, different communities, and the different countries took on COVID. And then there's the social unrest. So I think this is finally the wake-up call that people needed to get engaged. And that's what we need, is engagement from the people themselves. So we need to get people out on the streets, and they're definitely doing that now. And we need to get people angry, whether they're taking to social media or getting to the newspapers, and bringing about change. And I think as long as we can turn out good citizens, which is absolutely critical for us as leaders, whether it's in our homes, whether it's in our organizations, we have to turn out good citizens, to have everyone strive to be the best that they can be, and know that it takes a group effort. And when you look at the way I looked at it a couple weeks ago, when we had all this infighting, you had people talking over each other at the presidential debate, that wasn't a representation of those two fellas. That was a representation of us. When you look at what happens on social media around water coolers and things like that, we have to be a little bit better as the people, and we will be served better by those who will be in charge if we ourselves are better, because we should expect better, but at first we have to be better.
Thank you, Bob. Mark.
Well, I started to allude to this a minute ago. So that's just fake power. When you do that, it's not real power. It's not respect. It's just fear that you're promoting. You get real power with compromise, delegation, trust, and support. So that's what we need from our leaders. That's what we have to look at. I just don't think I think we just have to have the stamina as people in our small community to keep having these conversations and doing what's right. We have to also encourage those who are still on the sideline to step up and become leaders. It's a really scary place, right? Because your whole life is exposed, your family's exposed. It takes a lot of courage to be a leader. And I think there are people that just need a tap on the shoulder sometime to say, whether it's your local government, your state government, your federal government, we need you. We need this type of a person to lead us. And I think we have to, as a community, tap those people and expect and demand that those things are there. And again, I think it's about stamina and just staying the course, staying true to our beliefs that we have to have stamina. We have to have stamina. It's easy to give up and move away. We just have to have stamina and support each other by surrounding yourself with only those positive thinkers, only those people who work with you, and then trying to tip the balance on some people that are in the middle. It's a real tough challenge. It's a real tough, but it makes leadership fun. I think that's the fun part of it, right? It's fun to try and make those changes. I think that's the best part of it, to keep trying to do that.
Thank you, Mark. Robin.
Well, I would say to Judge Watson, don't give up hope. There is always hope. Sometimes it comes a little bit later than we hope it will, and sometimes it comes in a little bit different form than we think it should. But I agree that we've got to become energized. We have to stop sitting on the sideline ourselves and saying, my voice doesn't matter. Everyone's voice matters. Everyone has the opportunity to find their voice, and they need to find the group in which their voice can be heard. It's there. Sometimes it takes some redirection. Sometimes it takes the need to ask for help to find that location and that opportunity. It's one of the things that I think Leadership Niagara and you does very well. You help young people find their voice. You help them find it in the community. And part of finding that voice is giving people opportunities to make a difference and opportunities to see where their voice is going to matter and what they can do as they continue down their path to adulthood and careers. I agree. In this last year, you have to put aside the negative individuals, and sometimes that means shutting the news off for a few days. That means not listening to the radio unless it's your favorite station and the music that you love and enjoy. It's taking walks with your family and just not listening to the noise. The noise is deafening, and it is becoming increasingly deafening with every day and every hour. It's very disheartening. And if you try to remain positive and stick to those individuals who uplift you in the community, who uplift you as an individual, who share your values and who share the exciting things that can happen when you are all on the same page and all moving as one voice, it's just incredible. And that high will take you far into the community. So don't give up hope. We're still all out there. We just need to find our voices again and find out where we can make that difference. It's just the fear mongering and hatred speech. I am very fearful, even after the election, no matter who wins. We're in for some rough times. We're in for some rough months to be able to right the ship again. And regardless of who that ends up being, I think it's something that we've come too far now to let it go on. If if there are another 4 years of what we've had, I don't know that the American public will allow what goes on now to continue. And if there is a change, then hopefully we can weather that storm, because it's coming and it will be here. So working with the people who have your same values and ideals is the best way to do that. Stay positive, keep energized, and talk to the people that are on this who took the time to come out tonight and cared enough to listen to what Ellen and you put together in terms of a leadership forum. And it's just been a real pleasure to be a part of this group.
As a small strategy, Robin, you jarred my mind to say, you know what, we got to always take action from conversations. And I think the action from that question and from the conversation was, what has always helped me in those times of feeling down or hopeless is that just when you're there, you get a note, a handwritten note from someone. So I would challenge all of the people on here, including those that have spoken and myself, to take the time to write to somebody a short handwritten note. It's happened to me more times than I could tell you, and it's meant more to me than more things that have happened to me. So I would encourage you to just do it to one person. And it's not a chain letter. I'm not saying that. But if you wrote a positive note to somebody who has impacted you, this would get pretty big right off this call.
Mm-hmm.
Thank
Very
you.
true.
You know, we deliberately named tonight's session Leaders Sharing Vision, Values, and Views, because we truly believe that our three panelists have exhibited that all throughout their career and really in the leadership styles that they portray. If I ask the three of you tonight, our last statement is a good leader needs to know when to lead, when to follow, and when to walk behind. If I asked you to react to this statement and put yourselves in terms of our national election coming up, do you think that America could have a leader or risk having a leader that even thinks about when to follow or when to walk behind? If you could answer that pretty in a short amount of time, it would be great. So the first question I'm going to ask is for Mark, for you to answer that, please.
Oh, right. Thank you. You had to ask me that question. That's terrible.
I'm just following the order, Mr. Laurie. Please don't give the facilitator a hard time. We've had that on national TV.
My God, Mike Wallace or whoever you thank God.
No, it's Savannah Guthrie.
Yeah, I like Savannah Guthrie too. You got to do all three of those, right? But you got to know when to do it. You know, one of the things that I think about is there's really an art form in knowing when to leave, right? Whether it's a party, a call, a job, you got to read the signs at the right time, right? It's an art form. You know, how many times have we seen athletes, politicians, co-workers stay too long? So knowing when to leave is an art form. And, you know, I hope that somebody tells me when it's time to leave. Maybe they're already telling me and I'm not listening. I hope not. I don't think so. But there really is. You've got to be able to have a sense, like an emotional intelligence of when to do all three of those things, when to leave. And you got to have an emotional intelligence when to let. So you can't lead without having good people. So I'm trying to hire and find the smartest, best people to work with, right? I look better when I have people smarter than me working with me. I'm pretty comfortable in my skin now. So if you're comfortable enough with who you are, then find the best people to work with you, and then empower them, and it'll make you look better as a leader. Don't find people that are lesser than you. Find people that are stronger than you. That's something that I really believe in. And then there are times when you've just got to take the bull by the horns and say, you know what, I'm the leader. This is mine. I got it. I'm doing it. It's not going to be easy, but you have to have the emotional intelligence to know when to do all three of those things. So sometimes there's projects where you say, no, I got this one. This is one that has to come from me. Sometimes there's projects when I say, you know what, I'm going to rely on these smart people. I'm going to stay with them, staying next to them. And then there's other times when I say, you know what, I have to make a graceful exit on this. It's having the emotional intelligence when to push the right button. And that's how you get mentors, and it circles back to the beginning of this whole conversation and listening. So thank you, Savannah.
Thank you, Mr. Laurie. Robin Kruger, please, your thoughts.
I think there's two other additional characteristics that you need that really take center stage when you're looking at making decisions about what you need to do in your organization. One is humility. Don't think you're the smartest person in the room. As Mark has indicated, you need to find the smart people. Sometimes that is you, sometimes it's not. But don't be afraid to let others know that you aren't the smartest person in the room, and that's why you've asked them to be a part of your team and to collaborate with you. I think the other thing is don't be afraid to own a mistake. It's not someone else's fault if it didn't work out. If you were the person that made the decision and pulled the trigger, if it fails, it's on you, it's on me. And we need to regroup from there. And you need to be able to say that in front of your team. And you need to be able to say that in front of your board. You know, I made this decision and it didn't go well. And here's why I think it didn't go well. I think you also need to make sure that when you are making a final decision about what you're going to do and where you are in that process, you need creativity and you need flexibility. You need to be able to pivot quickly. You need to be able to change direction at a moment's notice. And again, the why that Mark has talked about, being able to explain things to people, doesn't mean that everybody's going to agree to you. One of my favorite things is somebody saying, you asked me for my input, but you didn't follow it. Doesn't mean I didn't take your input. It just means that based on all the input, I made a calculated decision that we follow this particular direction. If it doesn't work, we'll try something else. But don't be afraid to own those mistakes, and don't be afraid to be humble, because if you miss those two wonderful, life-changing opportunities, you will miss everything and you will not garner the respect that you deserve.
Good.
Okay, Mark had mentioned that it's artwork, and then Robin had mentioned that it's creativity that goes into leadership. So let's put it down to one simple situation. I would look at it as being something akin to paint by numbers. So when we orchestrate things as leaders, we're looking at the big picture. We're doing that basic outline. Somebody's got to fill that in. So you let all the other players within there add their little dab of color, a little bit of funk to it to make it look awesome, to do things that we probably couldn't have done ourselves. By pulling that whole picture together and filling in all those little color bubbles, we can make it look awesome. And that takes a teamwork effort in terms of leadership and everyone in that organization working together. And that's what we should expect from those in charge at government levels, those in charge within our organizations. But it's just as easy as paint by numbers.
I want to really thank our panelists for really sharing your expertise and your years of experience with us tonight. You know, in the world we're in right now, in the world of Zoom, I think all of us know our days and our nights are consumed of being on Zoom or calls. So I thank everybody for being on this call this evening. It's greatly appreciated. We hope that you really are walking away with more than you came with. It's been our pleasure to work with Leadership Niagara. We look forward to the next 2 Wednesdays. Next Wednesday, it's the military, the world perception. You can imagine what that conversation could be like. And on the October 28th session, it's the criminal justice system and the reform of it. So we hope you'll join us. Tomorrow night, we continue with the Levesque Institute, the Civic Engagement Series, 4 topics of the COVID-19 response, the economy, the healthcare, and racial equity. So over these next 3 weeks, we hope that you'll follow us. We hope that you'll spread the word. And again, our goal and our intent is to inform you to be a voice that matters and a vote that matters, and informed. So thank you. Enjoy the rest of your night. I think there's a baseball game on. I'm sure that's where my husband is. So I hope you enjoy the rest of the game and have a good evening. And please make sure, spread the word how important it is for this year for everyone to get out and vote. Thank you and have a good night.
Thank you, everyone. Great to see you all.
Wonderful job. Nice